glad to see everybody here. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Tom Erickson. We're a building owner in Lowertown, right across the street from the proposed ballpark. And we also live in that building, so we're a resident and also a building owner. We have had quite a bit of concern, as you probably know, about the ballpark. We were very, very excited about it until we realized relatively late in the game on the parking situation, which is our, I have to admit, self-centered view on it. It has to do with parking, but it just became very much involved, and this thing has grown momentum throughout the neighborhood, and glad to see all of you here. What I'd like to do is first introduce a few people. First, Councilmember Dave Thune. Dave has been just absolutely wonderful council member for us even before this situation. We, over time, have gone through a couple of deals that are big at the time, but they're minor now compared to this. And we always had a welcome here in going to Dave's office. It's been a pleasure dealing with you over the years. So Dave Thune, and then we have another one up here on the stage is Tim Hughes. Tim Hughes is the Senior Vice President of Alliance Bank. I wonder what's the banker doing up here. I know this is a fact. Tim has some loans in the neighborhood there, and he was affected or was worried about the value and the equity of some of their properties and loans on. You think if a ballpark is going into the neighborhood, the banker would be happy because all their properties that they have loans on would be going up. And he had a very deep concern that this might have an unintended consequence, at least with some of the properties, where it actually goes down and perhaps to get underwater. So that's where his interest is in this thing. Bill Hoskell has been involved with this for a long time, several years. We just met Bill Hoskell a couple of months ago, and we became involved with it and concerned. And we started wandering around the property, some of us in the neighborhood, and we began staring awfully hard at the Gillette building. Once we realized that the basement of the Gillette building was essentially a large truck parking lot already for semis to go into and be parked in there by the dozens, and storage and everything like that. It seemed like it was already a ready-built parking lot, and so we started wondering why can't this be integrated into it somehow, which was of course quite a bit different from the plan at the time, but we became excited about it, and then we met Bill Hoskell, and it turns out he'd been thinking about something like this for several years, and so it was sort of an alliance that came out of nowhere, but it's been a pleasure dealing with Bill in this time in the past. He's a very bright guy, and a little bit controversial at times, I understand over the years.
I'm hearing it, I tell you, and I can't help it.
But you have to kind of, I've learned you have to kind of listen to him whenever he says something, because he's pretty well thought out, even though it initially doesn't quite match with what your prior ideas might have been. And then the other one, by the way, I'd like to introduce, it's a pleasure having Mike on here. He's observing this, and what we're going to try to do tonight is not monopolize this with a bunch of monologue on our behalf. Ideally, we'd like to have well over half the time be questions and concerns of you people and whatever your ideas are. And it's Mike is an unexpected, I'd say, guest really, because maybe you can address some of these issues too, or if some of you have questions for. I'm putting you on the spot. I didn't tell you I'd be putting you on this kind of a spot, but if you don't mind, if people ask you questions, I think I'd be happy to have a dialogue, because there's obviously some differences of opinion one way or another on this thing, and I think a dialogue is the thing that puts this thing together, and more likely to have a happy conclusion to everybody than be on different sides. And then also,
I'll help you.
Yes.
It's Annie Heidi Cooper.
Annie Heidi Cooper of the St. Paul Saints, and very glad to have Annie here too, and likewise, input that you might want into this thing would be very much, because again, we're not looking to be adversaries. I certainly am not. And I think everybody wants to have a better product at the end, and anything that we can do to facilitate this from the perspective of the Saints, or the neighborhood, or the city, or anybody else involved, that's our goal. And so, is that?
Purpose of the meeting.
Pardon?
Tell us everybody.
Oh, the focus, the purpose of the meeting.
Follow the script.
Well, I pretty well already said it. I think our purpose here is to have a better ballpark and that it fits the needs of the people in the neighborhood. That's it.
Before I begin, let's have Councilmember Thune say a word or two if you'd like.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out. The reason I got involved in politics 30 years ago was because I was an angry neighbor and chose to come and speak out at City Hall and demand answers. And I think that's not only your right, but it's your responsibility. So I'm really glad all of you are here. I'm glad all of you are asking questions because we, the folks at City Hall, it's our obligation to answer you. I was intrigued with some of the ideas that Bill brought forward, and I've worked to make sure that we get that listened to and answers given to, why is it we couldn't provide for these things? I think probably the big mistake that we made was that we designed a very nice ballpark, but we didn't have, for example, the parking needs of the neighborhood in the mix, and that is a mistake. What we're trying to do is figure out, can we recover from this mistake through a number of ways, make sure that everyone in Lowertown that now lives there is just as happy to be there 5 years from now as you are now. So thank you for coming out, and thank you, Bill, for pushing forward new ideas, and all of you who have property here and live here, thank you very much.
Mid-April. We haven't seen us in a little while. Thank you for coming. Let's start this meeting off right. Annie and Mike, how many people in this room want to see the St. Paul Saints come to downtown St. Paul? Friendly audience. Tom said, this has kind of been on my mind for 2 years and 2 months. In December of 2010, somebody slipped some of the earliest conceptual drawings that came up from the Saints Ballpark under my gallery door one night. I don't know who that person was.
Probably me.
Is that you, maybe?
I ran around everywhere trying to let people know about this effort.
Then we are here today because of that effort that night.
Well, good.
And I saw it, the ballpark concept that we've been seeing from the city. I've never said it's not a bad concept. It's a good concept. I'm kind of into reuse and everything, and that Gillette building is such a remarkable building. I thought instinctively, there's got to be some way that this can be incorporated, it can be brought together. So the first drawings that I did were in January 2011. 30 days, it's a site plan and perspective. And over time, this has just kind of grown. And it was 2 years ago this month that I did put it before Mike Beck. He came to my gallery with Julie, I forget Julie's last name. And we had a very informative, cordial conversation. Mike did like the idea. He became rather animated. I said, Mike, we're making a lot of money with this. And he at the time called me a type A personality, very creative, very energetic, which is what Mike Beck is. I'm going to start right now with the city's proposal for you. PowerPoint presentation here. Let's see if we do this right. There's beautiful downtown St. Paul. There's the Gillette building. I mean, we've all seen it 1,000 times, but because the building is so nondescript, I've heard it's called ugly. It's not ugly, it's just a nondescript building. I mean, it's been part of our lives. I mean, anybody who's been here for a while. And there's a close-up shot of it.
It used to employ a lot of people.
It used to, yeah, hundreds. This is the Saints Ballpark right now. The one thing that really stands out as much as their field is the tail. Anybody else that doesn't want to pay for that mile, park a mile on either side, you have free parking. This is the Gillette building today. This is the new light rail maintenance facility. There's Gillette. This photo is a few years old. One thing I want to point out to you is when the city rebuilt the farmers market in '99, I think it was, there's the sheds. It had parking very close there. This photo's a few years old. It had parking there, parking here. Lot 270 condominiums are now there, farmers market lofts are there, and this is going to go away for the new ballpark plan.
Dog park too?
As of a few days ago, we heard from the city that it's going to stay. I think it'll get a little smaller, but that's just what we heard. Okay.
That's your favorite spot.
And this was a flyer that came out a year ago now, I suppose, for the lawmakers and the public. Many of you have seen this. This is the design. I don't know if it's really part of the thinking anymore. I think, personally, I was wanting something a little bit more traditional that kind of fits into the fabric of Lowertown, being a historic district. That's the Gillette building today. We've all seen this view 1,000 times. For the city's ballpark plan, I'm going to point out something. Here's the end of Fifth Street. So at this point, you're going to be looking out. And you tear the building down, what you're going to see in the distance is not Mountains Park or Bluffs. You're going to be seeing the traffic on the Lafayette Bridge. So that sense of intimacy that Lowertown has will go away if you do that site plan that I just showed you. There's the ballpark plan, and again, it's a nice ballpark. I've never argued much with it. My big concerns with it were, how do people get to the cheap lots back here? You know, if they're coming in from the east or such. The dog park, as I just said, is going to stay.
How does the traffic flow to those lots?
Well,
Going in on 52, north on 52, we have to
coming north on 52, there's a new, it's not on here. You end up on East 7th. I think the long-range plan maybe is to look it up at Prince Street, if I'm correct. 94 from the east will come off here. But see, this isn't an intersection, so you'll be come down here. You know, it's, yeah. I think there'll be a lot of congestion personally. That's just my opinion. What I want to do right now is, a year ago, I made a video about this concept that you're about to hear about. I hired a young man off of Craigslist. He was wonderful. I just kind of looked over his shoulder, and he knew how to do all the technical things. And Chuck is going to help me start the button on this right now. While he's doing this, how many of you have been out to the Midway Stadium? Is it a lovely place? I love the tailgating area. I like to sit in out past first base, kind of in the cheap bleachers myself. And again, this was made in July of last year, so it was pre the city getting the money from the state. So keep that in mind when you look at this.
Root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame.
I could just jump in here on that video just for a second. Like I said, I didn't even know Bill 2 months ago until we kind of came together on this situation. And again, our point of view was very self-centered, if you will. I'll admit it. We were looking at parking. We're desperately afraid of what's going to be happening to the value of our property. And then when I saw Bill's proposal, I said, all of a sudden, just like a lightning bolt hit me. I said, oh my God, this thing is bigger than just a parking lot. This has the potential of being something which I'm convinced today, if it was done, it would be a national notoriety type of thing. I mean, the Saints are already kind of a little bit, it's a perfect fit for the Saints, I think, because the Saints have a little bit of a funky reputation. And this is funky in the sense that it's very much of a far out thing to do. I don't believe, maybe somebody can correct me, but I don't think something like this has ever been done in probably the history of the world, or at least the United States with a ballpark. And another thing I think that people kind of get a little bit tied up, and I know some do, is to the orientation of the ballpark and whether the sun angle is this way and that way and so on and so forth. I don't think Bill even really is, you know, the concept is there. In other words, you could turn the stadium 90 degrees this way or 20 degrees that way or whatever. The idea, or let's say, for instance, there's been some talk of the Minnesota Wild have been somewhat frustrated on a practice facility that they may be interested in moving into part of that area at a fraction of the cost of whatever it is they're trying to do now with the legislature and different things. I mean, there's a multitude of different, I mean, it's just such a massive amount of space. It's just kind of like, from an artist standpoint, a blank canvas, and you can do so many things that would be complementary to the stadium, and like I say, just such a total unique thing. I mean, I'm just amazed by it. And so, like I say, I came into it with a more or less of a single purpose in mind, and parking, and come out and think, hey, this thing is really kind of a crazy idea, and if it could ever be put together, it would literally be on magazine covers around the United States. And I think news is a real big example. I think it's a wonderful idea.
What I was going to do at this point is quickly go through as much as I can the presentation on the concepts from the video. I'm going to talk about the sun and the parking. If you have questions for me now, or would you rather me give you more information before you start asking questions? Yes, ma'am.
Have you been in touch with the farmers market people, and are they
I met
closing that place down if the original plan?
I met with the board about this. I think it was it might be nearly a winter, a year ago now, and then I did meet with them again on Monday night. And they're in a tough spot. I mean, they lease their space from the city of St. Paul, so they don't want to slap the landlord's hand. But and I talked to them a year ago. I said, some people think this is your hobby. They don't think this is your livelihood. And if I was at the farmer's market, I'd be very nervous because, as I pointed out earlier, 2 of the 3 lots that were closest to them when the city rebuilt those sheds are now gone, and then the largest one is about to go away. So they are concerned, and many of their customers that I talked to on Saturday were very concerned. I'll move along with the presentation here. Okay, a minor league baseball, and this video that I showed you, this concept, it can be done. I mean, this city built the Cathedral of St. Paul, built the Capitol Building. We used to build some world-class structures, so this concept is real. Minor League Baseball Park is coming to Lowertown in 2015. That's great news. Let's make sure the $54 million investment is a true multiple-use year-round destination center. View from the penthouse of Galtier Plaza. There's it up close. This was taken about a week or 2 ago. All of the dirt that you're seeing being moved around there is from the new Lafayette Bridge. There's the new OEM facility right next to Gillette, and there was an example of a part of the old building was reused for this facility.
This is a ponytail
There's the view we've all seen 1,000 times. As I said earlier, you take that building down, you're going to be looking at the traffic going back and forth on the Lafayette Bridge. And changing the facade on a building, I mean, that's, you can take a house that has siding and add brick or stone. I mean, there's umpteen ways to change the facade on a building as well, and do so cost effectively. As I said earlier, that's where the Saints are at today. And that was the Gillette site several years ago. And there's the ballpark cut into the building. I'll point something out here real quick. This is the suggested area for removal of the ballpark. Initially, it was supposed to be dug into the basement level. After meeting Mr. Harrison and talking to more other people, it was raised up to the first floor level so you could have 2 blocks, 1 block by 2 block of parking underneath the entire level. This is actually the roof, and so it would be a green roof. As the video said, phase 2 would be a velodrome, a bike racing facility. And yes, the OEM building was not designed to have that type of load, but you can change the columns in the center of the building to support this type of structure. This would be a formal rooftop garden in this area. If you look at the massing of this compared to Mears Park, that's at least half the size of it. Why not put a rollerblade park up there in the middle of it, a skateboard? There's so many things you can do in this facility. There's the view of the Gillette building from Mr. Erickson's rooftop. Can you imagine, ladies and gentlemen, cutting off part of the building and having access to this? Look at the view you have. I mean, you can truly, from the roof of this building, see the river, and you are higher than the Lafayette Bridge.
And I don't know how many of you read my letter to the editor here a couple of weeks ago, but another concept that has been kicked around, and we've been internally, obviously, trying to save the building now, but you could have a thing here that would overlook the park and have something that would make the Budweiser deck at the Target Center look like it was a cheap substitute for what you could put up here, the views and everything. It would just be fabulous. You could have a rooftop bar restaurant up there, or lounge, or whatever, something that would be truly replacement with 5 stars behind it for the crowd that likes to tailgate right now. They could tailgate on that whole roof to figure out some sort of way to do it.
I remember 2 years ago I sent an email to Mike Beck. I said, I'll talk about tailgating a little later on. You can put a couple dozen pickup trucks on that roof, old pickup trucks, and you have drawings for who gets to tailgate on the roof. They get a complimentary picnic basket. And that's what the Saints are all about, is fun and people having a good time. This is down in the lower level of the building. We're back up here real quick so you kind of get your orientation. Again, when I initially drew this, it was dug down in the basement. It's actually raised up. If you were down in the stands right there looking out, this is a view, so there's no longer 3 levels. It's just 2. Tom's building, the Alvin building, is right here. I forgot to draw the billboard on top of it. But this was a demonstration of the sun. You know, early in the season, and then late in the season, that's where the sun would set. On June 22nd, long steady air, it starts coming out further. And there's that velodrome shot you saw earlier. Velodrome. This is the basement level of the building today. It's actually a walkout on the east side. There's 3 loading dock doors where trucks can drive in. All of these dots are massive concrete columns flared out on the top. They're about 27.5 feet on center. Mr. Erickson did a little research, and perhaps when this building was completed in 1969, it was the largest reinforced concrete building in America. And this is after I became acquainted with the Ericksons and Matt Gross a little bit more, where I changed basement level. Right at the end of 5th Street, where it hits Broadway, vehicles would be able to drive into 2-block long ramp. You could get maybe 500 spaces in there, maybe more. This is the 1st floor level. The building's existing front entrance is right there. This is the suggested area for removal. And then there's the ballpark on the 1st floor now. What's really interesting about this is, the front entrance of the building is perfectly located. This would be a new pedestrian entrance looking down 5th Street. The ramp entrance would be underneath this. If you look at the floor plans of the building, stairwells and elevator shafts are well situated for repurposing of the building. For this ballpark concept, the suggestion is stair and elevator tower here and here to serve the paying area of the ballpark. This is the mezzanine level. It's between 1st floor and 2nd. It must have a low ceiling. Otherwise, it's open to down below. And this is on that video you mentioned earlier. You could put that's 26,000 square feet. That's maybe, you could do a sports bar. And this part of it that just happens to touch the cut, that's 50 feet. It's as long as this room, huh? So there's just another potential use for it. This is then the 2nd or 3rd level of the building. As you can see, it's mostly open. It's warehouse space. And then This is what you could do. This, potentially could be a skyway level someday. I love skyways. Other people don't want to see a skyway come here. That's not worth getting hung up on. This is the level where that video showed you earlier that the Twin City Model Railroad Museum could go. I met with their board about 9 months ago, it was last winter as well, and I wanted to see them move back to Union Depot. A lot of people forgot that they had their origins in St. Paul back in the 30s and 40s. They moved to Bandana Square in the mid-'80s, and that did not succeed as a specialty retail center, and they are now the lone remnant out there. How many of you have been to the Model Railroad Museum? How many of you have been there in the last year? That's the problem, dying on the vine. You've got to get them back downtown. When I went to talk to them about Union Depot, the board president is an architect, and he is aware of this Gillette concept. He said, we don't want to hear about Gillette, not Union Depot, because it's not big enough. They need about 18 to 20,000 square feet. This is before I met them. I had delineated this as commercial space. Be terrific if they were down there. Here's the rooftop level. Dave is behind a miniature golf course up at the Schmidt Brewery.
Yeah, I looked at our
Maybe we could have a miniature golf course on the roof. I mean, there's just so many things you could do with it, of course. And that's the end of the introduction to the Gillette proposal. And what I want to do primarily with this meeting is do a comparison between the city's current plan and this one. And it's based upon a letter that many of you received from Mayor Coleman about a week or so ago. And that letter, all of you have the letter from Mayor Coleman? It's on the table there. It's a two-sided deal. What I did today is the areas that I thought were most important for discussion, they're numbered and they're underlined, and there may be 18 of them on the sheet. And again, I've known Chris since '98, since he was went behind the ears council person. I take that little hiatus there for a while. And I like Chris. I mean, the first time I met him was at a Landmark Center event that I had for Earth Day, which was probably back in '98. And everything that I've proposed isn't meant to harm him politically or take away from his position. It's meant to help him help the city. But any questions at this point, or I'll start in on this comparison? Doing okay? We go down the list. Number one, this is Mayor Coleman speaking. I believe that it is important we build a first-class facility that we can all be proud of. I think everybody in the room wants it. I think we all want a facility we can be proud of. I guess we have a different opinion about how to make that happen. Number two, simply put, after repeated review and study of the site by city staff, consultants, and other experts in the field, there remains no viable option for reuse of the Diamond Products building if the ballpark project is to move forward. Okay, there's the building again, ladies and gentlemen, kind of a close-up shot. That would be right on Broadway and 5th Street. There's the back side. That's where the existing loading dock doors would be to take parkers into that basement level. This is Old Bush Stadium in Indiana. It's kind of a forgotten ballpark, and rather than tear it down, they took the ballpark and turned it into an apartment building. Okay? Now, imagine there's some people there in Indiana that tear the thing down. It's not worth reusing. What a lovely thing. So, St. Paul has, deep roots in Mr. Thune is behind a lot of this, repurposing existing buildings, the Schmidt Brewery, the Hams Brewery, Landmark Center almost met its death back in the 70s. And there's also been more contemporary structures that have certainly seen reuse. And that is real. You can cut a section away of that building and do this to it. Mike, do you want to reply to what I just said? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, or if you want to inject yourself.
Whenever you're ready.
You want to start now, or should I go a little bit further? We go to issue number 3, best practices in baseball facility design. Dictate that a baseball field should be northeast to southeast in orientation, and the design that has emerged over the past few years has responded to this practice. Saints Field does face northeast. Midway Stadium now. This is a little mix-up here in the video. This is My major league ballparks in America, 4 of them face west-southwest, 2 of them face west, 5 face northwest, 1 faces south-southeast, 1 faces north-northwest, 5 face south, 7 face south-southwest, 5 face southwest. And the same goes for minor league ballparks. They do face a variety of directions. Is the ball field in Gillette, as you've seen, is it ideal? No, but you might say that the city's direction isn't ideal as well. Yes? Yes? Lauren? Speak up. I want people in the back to hear you more.
When I was a kid, I used to watch all the baseball games at Lexington and University.
Yes.
I'm playing. Play. Play.
The outfield
Play.
east side. So any claim
Daddy's in now.
that all players will be looking at the sun, it seems a lot of them.
Play.
I think the direction of the stadium makes too much difference.
Minute Maid Field in Houston faces the same direction as suggested for Gillette. I think that works so well because the sun in Houston doesn't sit as far north as it does in the Twin Cities. But the building's mass opposite as the sun's going down in Gillette to some respects, and Cobb's building would accomplish the same thing. This is the outside of Minute Maid Field in Houston. There's the outside of Gillette. I mean, you can do a lot of things with this building, maybe not that dramatic, but there's a lot of potential with that building. There's the Saints plan right now. Downtown sits northwest north, not northwest, but northwest north. Due north, due west. March 21st, that's where the sun was setting. It's about around there now. And about June 22nd, it'll be up there. And while their batter will not be looking into the sun, all of the outfield players will be looking into the sun. Yes, Gary?
Hey, I did a little bit of research.
Speak up.
The best practices on the baseball, I can get the reference on that if you want. Imagine a line running from the home plate to the pitcher's mound to second base. They're recommending the best practices would be east-northeast on a line. So if you figure that way, that's what they prefer. Not everyone's like that, like this way. Yeah, remember the roads are not where the east, you can see that the roads are different. But I'm saying that's what the best practice is. So east, northeast would be the line from the home plate to the pitcher's mound to second base.
That is the ideal, but as we all know, most ballparks, few of them are ideal in every way. There's almost always some sort of constraints that dictate how it's ultimately built.
Let me just say this here too, on this, it's one of the, again, being Parkin-centric, I didn't even think of this, but at some of the later on meetings we had, the large population center of Lowertown is kind of in that area. That's where it's most densest. And what some people were concerned about is by facing the field generally this way, but even more so, they were in favor of keeping the Gillette building up to be as a noise barrier to force that sound off that way. So they were more in favor of having the home plate, if you will, be somewhere down in this area, again, incorporated into the Gillette building, which would be a natural sound barrier, so that they would keep noise, whether it's special events or concerts or whatever, but they felt as if there would be less noise hitting their apartments down in this area by leaving the Gillette building in place, partially as an idea as a noise barrier.
Real quickly, let's, where's that? Bear with me, folks. Okay. Yeah, I'll just do this right now. Anybody who knows this site, when you walk around the corner off Broadway, you hear the roar of the freeway. And truthfully, this ballpark plan or the cities, they're both going to hear the freeway. You know, theirs is dug into the ground. Whether they're going to get it worse than if you reuse Gillette, I don't know. But what you do know is that when you start walking around this building, the mass of this building is a sound barrier. instantly quieter. You tear down that building, all that freeway noise is going to flow right into the farmer's market area, right into the heart of Lowertown. Their concept is 1 story high. And in this area, 1 story, it's going to be perhaps even with this roof. By the time you get down here, because of the grade change, someone dug into the ground. Here's the Gillette concept. Again, there is north, there is west. That's where the sun set 2 weeks ago. That's what it's setting about now, in June 22nd. Talked to a lot of people that like baseball, and they don't understand how the batter, looking at a pitcher that direction, is going to be blinded by the sun. When most of the season is going to be setting over here. One thing I want to point out, Gillette, the mass of the building is going to cast a shadow over infield. And then Tom's building is actually 4 stories higher than this building, so that will cast a shadow. There is potential that the sun is going to come through. Whether it's going to blind the batter or not, it's up for argument, I suppose.
I think the thing to emphasize, as I did before too, that can be twisted in there. It's not, it's a later on discussion as to where the field is exactly, and if the Wild decide to move in one end of it, you might have to shift it over rather than being on center or whatever else may be the case. So.
I was just about saying, you can turn this. I think it's beautiful that it's symmetrical, like balance. But you can actually turn the field if need be.